Hello, peace lovers, colleagues, and friends. I'm sorry to have to address you electronically. One of the pitfalls of old age is that travel becomes somewhat tricky. Thank you for the opportunity to say a few words of encouragement and solidarity as you settle down to apply your minds to solving one of the most enduring human rights crises on earth. The credit that is due to the government of Myanmar for reforms undertaken over the past couple of years does not blind us to the ongoing disavowal and repression of its ethnic minorities, the Rohingya population in particular. A country that is not at peace with itself, that fails to acknowledge and protect the dignity and worth of all its people, is not a free country. Freedom is indivisible. All must be invited. All are part. The Rohingya people were not consulted when the British drew the Burmese border on the map. With those strokes of a pen, they became a borderland people, people whose ancestral land traverses political boundaries. Burma's post-colonial government, elected in 1948, officially recognized the Rohingya as an indigenous community, as did its first military government that ruled from 1962 to 1974. But manipulation by the military of ethnic minorities in the west of the country dates back to the late 1950s. At first, the military sought to co-opt the Muslim Rohingya to quell the Buddhist Rakhine. After Rakhine separatists had been crushed, the military turned on the Rohingya. In 1978, the Far Eastern Economic Review described the Rohingya as the victims of Burmese apartheid. A few years later, a citizenship law left the Rohingya off the list of indigenous people, describing them as Muslim immigrants from neighboring Bangladesh. In a context of rising anti-Muslim sentiment in Myanmar, many Buddhists, particularly in Rakhine State, regard the Rohingya as illegal immigrants. More than 100,000 Rohingya are trapped in internment camps. They may not leave for their own protection. They hold only temporary identity cards, and in February, they lost all voting rights. The government of Myanmar has sought to absolve itself of responsibility for the conflict between the Rakhine and the Rohingya, projecting it as sectarian or communal violence. But I'd be more inclined to heed the warnings of eminent scholars and researchers, including Amartya Sen, the Nobel laureate in economics, who say this is a deliberately false narrative to camouflage the slow genocide being committed against the Rohingya people. There is evidence, they say, that anti-Rohingya sentiment has been carefully cultivated by the government itself. Human beings may look and behave differently to one another, but ultimately, none of us can claim any kind of supremacy. We are all the same. There are no natural differences between Buddhists and Muslims. It is possible to transplant a Christian heart into a Hindu chest, and for a citizen of Israel to donate a kidney to a Palestinian. We're born to love without prejudice, without distrust, members of one family, the human family, made for each other and for goodness, all of us. We are taught to discriminate, to dislike, and to hate. As lovers of peace and believers in the right of all members of the family to dignity and security, we have particular responsibilities to the Rohingya. 2015 is a big year for Myanmar, with both a referendum on its constitution and a general election on its calendar. Even as we seek to encourage the country to build on the reforms it has started, we have a responsibility to ensure that the plight of the Rohingya is not lost. We have a responsibility to hold to account those of our governments and corporations that seek to profit from new relationships with Myanmar, to ensure their relationships are established on sound ethical bases. And we have a responsibility to persuade our international and regional aid and grant-making institutions, including the European Union, to adopt a common position, making funding the development of Myanmar conditional on the restoration of citizenship, nationality, and basic human rights to the Rohingya. Over to you. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Okay. Hold on. Hello, this is...
No, wait. Okay, ready? Okay, camera rolling?
Yep.
Okay.
Hello, this is José Ramos Horta, speaking from New York, and I regret not being able to be in Oslo at this time of this very timely, extremely important gathering as Myanmar move towards elections and hopefully consolidation of democracy, freedoms, rule of law. I'm very familiar with Myanmar, although I could not claim to be an expert. But for those of you who might not know much about my past activities or background, I first went to Burma then when hardly anyone paid much attention to Myanmar. In July 94, I went there, crossing the border from Chiang Mai and went to Manipur. There, with some colleagues, I conducted an international human rights and diplomacy training program for students, activists, many of whom I know today are back in their home country, in Yangon, very much engaged in the peace process in Myanmar. If today we can talk about one of the most neglected people in the world, one of the most forgotten, I would say it would be the Rohingya of Myanmar. We are all human beings in this planet. Myanmar is a mosaic of ethnic groups, is a mosaic of cultures, of values, of different experiences, a crossroad from Asia with many influences. But the Rohingya seem to have the least of rights, the least of privileges as citizens of Myanmar, as human beings. There have been extraordinary abuse, humiliation, killings, expulsion of Rohingyas from their ancestral land. Because whether they had been there for thousands of years, or few hundred years, or if they were there only some generations ago, they still have rights as peoples of Myanmar because they were born there in Myanmar. They have been living there for generations, regardless of how long, thousands of centuries they have been there. I do not wish to lecture any group in Myanmar. I do not wish to lecture authorities in Myanmar. I know the process of transition from dictatorship to democracy is a complex, tortuous, unpredictable, long one, and we must all contribute to create a climate of dialogue, mutual acceptance, and maybe moving towards a roadmap leading to a Myanmar that is politically open, pluralistic, and that is embracing of all its ethnic and religious communities. However, I know that this is easier said than done because there are suspicions, there are prejudices, but that's what leaders are all about. Leaders at community level, leaders at national level, who must embrace each other, who must act with compassion, with wisdom, to embrace everyone, including the Rohingyas, so that Myanmar can be a shining example in Southeast Asia and in Asia in general. Again, I wish to pay tribute to all those in Myanmar who for generations have struggled for freedom, for democracy, until today when you are on the eve of free general elections, and I hope that all will be able to participate. The Rohingyas, the Muslim communities, and everyone in an atmosphere of freedom, of no coercion, of no threats, and when election results come, it will be a new promising beginning for Myanmar, a further step in the consolidation of democracy in your beautiful country. I wish you all success in this conference, and as always, I pray to God, the Almighty and the Merciful, to continue to bless the great people of Myanmar with wisdom, happiness, and prosperity.